Hey guys, this is Acerook, and today we're going to learn about pins, more specifically about absolute pins. So let's first get into the concept of what a pin is. So let's go ahead and get right into it, into our first diagram. Alright, so in this game, it's just a normal opening. You know, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, developing our pieces in the center. Knight c3, d6, bishop b5. And so what does bishop b5 do? And so essentially this bishop is attacking this knight and is attacking this king. So for example, this knight can't move because then the bishop will be attacking the king. So this is what we call a pin. This knight's pinned to the king simply because this knight can't move. So what does this mean as black? Should we worry about this? It's not, it's not devastating yet because we still have a pawn guarding this knight. So something like maybe a6, we're questioning down what this bishop is really doing. Is it going to go back, keeping the pin? In that case, we could still play something like b5, and after bishop b3, this knight is no longer pinned, and this knight can freely move. Or we can simply just take after a6, take,
Check.
take, and this is fine. But sometimes black doesn't want to ruin the queenside pawn structure, so something like maybe bishop d7, and so this knight can freely move because now this bishop is no longer attacking this knight, or excuse me, this king. So, but yeah. Now, a concept that we'll cover in the next video is basically this is absolute pin because this knight can never move. Now, a relative pin is something like if black played bishop to g4. What is a relative pin? So it's basically, the idea is the same. You're pinning a lower value piece to a higher value piece. So this bishop is telling the knight, saying that, hey, this knight can't move or else you're going to lose your queen. So for example, let's say the knight moves back here to g1. Then the bishop can take the queen, like so. So essentially, even though the knight, the difference between these two knights is this knight can still move, it's a relative pin, while this knight is absolute pin. And don't feel like the terminology, you don't really have to memorize the terminology, oh, this is absolute pin, but this is relative pin. It's good to know the difference. The name is not really too important, but the effects is. So this knight can never move until this bishop is away. This bishop on b5 is gone. Versus this bishop on g4 is doing a relative pin because this knight can move away, like so. Not that it's wise to move away, but we'll point out some examples of both absolute and relative pins. So with that further ado, what can we do about pins? And so we're going to take a look at this position, and we're going to do absolute pins. So absolute pins. So right now, currently in this position, the bishop is pinning this knight to this king. So this knight can never move. And so what do you do with pin pieces? Well, you literally put more pressure on the pin piece because you're attacking a piece that can't move. So in this position, let me fix this. There we go. All right. In this position, go ahead and try to find a way to attack the pin piece being c6, the knight on c6. Go ahead and try to find a way to attack the pin piece here. All right. So a way to attack this pin piece is playing the move d5. Notice that even though this knight really wants to move away, it can't because this bishop is pinning this knight to the king again. So after this, probably something like bishop d7. Then after take, white is simply up a piece for a pawn. So, so that is how you utilize how to utilize absolute pins to its maximum effect by basically putting more pressure on the pin piece. So with that, let's go ahead and look at another opening mistakes that most beginners fall for. So in this opening, e4, d5, the Scandinavian defense, it is technically unwise in terms of opening development for beginners because you're bringing out your queen too early. So after white develops knight to c3, attacking the queen, like so, the main line either goes, you either move the queen to d8 or a5. Again, but white is still developing faster than black in terms of this queen being out too early. But most actually sometimes pull this queen not to d8 or a5, but to c6. So go ahead and try and find a winning move that utilizes absolute pin. Alright, so here in this position, the move bishop b5 pins the queen to the king. And so this queen can't move, and black is going to be down a full queen. So essentially now, after something bishop d7, we take this queen, and probably knight takes c6. We're up a queen for a bishop, which is worth 6 points of material, which is a lot. So this is probably decisive. So don't fall for absolute pins by playing. Just be careful. Putting a piece on the same diagonal or same file or rank. So what is the next position? So we'll show you basically what happens on the rank, because we've seen a lot of bishop pinning, along the diagonal, but let's just see how it goes horizontally and vertically. So for example, in this position, we have black to move here, and he's looking at that knight, and he's looking at it, and it's like, there's nothing guarding it, so I'll just take it. And so in this position, white can utilize an absolute pin to basically win material. So here, white to move. Go ahead and try and find the move. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found the move already. But the correct move here is rook to e1, or pinning the queen to the king. And so after this, probably something like defending the queen. Now take. White is up a point in the exchange, where after this is actually quite terrible for white, or excuse me, for black. White's currently up 1 point, but probably something after take. Here in this instance, queen to e1, again pinning the bishop to this king, who is encastled. And so after probably some defending, like f6 or something, then again we put more pressure to the pin piece. So any move like d4 will work, or f4. I hesitate playing f4 because I don't want to block in this bishop by playing f4. So probably something like d4, winning this bishop, because again, it can't move, or else the queen is under attack. Or the queen is attacking the king, so the king's under attack. So after d4, we're attacking this bishop, that's pinned, so to the king. So probably something like castle, and then which is up simply a whole piece. And up the exchange a lot, 4 points, and so it should be easy game for white to win. Alright, so give you a couple more examples of how to pin pieces. So let's go ahead and look at this position. white to move and try to find a pin that wins material. Alright, so the correct move, go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found it. The correct move is queen to a4. We're pinning this knight to this king. And so after this, the queen is attacking the knight, and so there's no way for black to defend this knight. And so after something like king moves away, we simply take the knight off the board. I don't think there's a way, let's see. Nope. Yep, there's no way for black to get his queen all the way and protect this knight on b5. So after this, fire king over, and now we take. So, alrighty. Let's go ahead and look at the next puzzle. This one is a little bit more difficult, but I believe you guys can do it. So go ahead and try to find the best move here. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found the correct answer. This is a little bit more difficult, so don't feel too bad. So the correct move is bishop takes e6. So what does this move do? So basically, after bishop takes e6, bishop is paying this rook to the king, so this rook can't move. But what makes this more clever is basically after this move, this pawn can't take this bishop because this rook is pinning this pawn to the queen. So for example, if this pawn were to take this bishop, then we can take this
Check.
with check. And so in this position, after something like maybe queen to f8,
Check.
so takes, white is simply up a whole piece a whole 3-point advantage. A rook pawn for a knight. So for a bishop. A rook pawn for a bishop. And so 6 points versus 3 points. So white is going to be having a very nice endgame to finish. So this should be easy simply because, again, up 3 points. So, but again, the key move here was bishop takes e6. All right. Okay. We're going to do some test questions. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. All right. So white to move. We have some, black is putting a lot of pressure in our center with this pawns and these knights and these queens. And so we're trying to find some way to maybe use absolute pins and maybe create some counterattack. So alright, go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found the answer already. I'm going to reveal the answer right now. So, the correct answer is queen to h5 check. And so this pawn can't take this queen because this bishop is pinning this pawn to the king. So after the king moves back to either g7 or g8, so after maybe g7, then we take this pawn check. And so black is forced to go to h8, And so here, the winning move is
checkmate,
queen to a7, checkmate. Same thing if black were to go to g8, queen takes g6, check, king to h8, and now
checkmate.
queen to h7, checkmate. So hopefully you guys understand that puzzle, because this next one is going to be very similar. So go ahead and take your time on this next puzzle. Try to find the best move utilizing pins. Alright, go ahead and pause the video if you have found the correct answer. Need a little bit more time. This is a little bit more difficult, but it has a similar effect. So here, the winning move is rook takes h7. And so this kind of looks like, we're sacrificing the rook for nothing, but after king takes h7, what to do? So now we can play knight to g5 check. And so we're forking this king and this bishop. So, if the king moves away, then we can take this bishop, and we're going to fork these two, queen and rook. A bad response is probably, king g7,
Check.
and now we're forking, making a royal family fork here. So, okay, black is going to take. So after f takes g5, then queen h5 check, similar like last time. So now after, king g7 or king to g8, so same thing,
Check.
king takes g6 check, king h8,
checkmate,
queen 7 checkmate. Or after this, queen g8, king g8, then queen
check,
takes g6 check, king h8, and finally
checkmate,
queen h7 checkmate. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and look at the next puzzle. Try to think about absolute pins. It is while white's move. The question is king h1 the best move to get out of the check, or is bishop to d4 a good move? So the decision is either bishop to d4 to block the check, or king h1 to move away from the check. So go ahead, take your time, try to find which answer is the best. Alright, go ahead and pause the video if you need a little bit more time. So here we go. After this, bishop d4, if you said bishop d4, shame on you, because after absolute pin, this bishop can't move because this bishop on c5 is pinning this bishop to the king. So black can play queen takes c5, and now equalizing the material. So after this, we can't take this queen because this bishop is pinning to the king. So essentially, we were up a piece, and now we're just equal with black. And so after probably something like take, this is simply a very drawish endgame for black, or for both sides. So so the correct move here is to get away from the check is just to play king h1, and this is okay. And now we're just up a whole piece with this extra knight. So, and just to make sure that you don't fall for absolute pins by trying to play some blocking moves or with bishop d4. So, all right, let's go ahead and look at the next puzzle. All right, So the question here is, now black is under check with the queen on c3. And so now black can respond with queen d4. And so is this a good move? Yes or no? And try to find you know, the good move for white using pins. So notice that this queen, another hint is this queen on d4 is right now pinned. It can't move because it's pinned to the king. So that's the hint. So there's the bit. So this queen can't move because it's pinned to the king. So after queen d4, go ahead and try to find the best move. Alrighty, so after this, go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found that answer. After this, white has a very good intermediate move, rook to d1. So what do you do with pin pieces? You attack and put more pressure on the pin piece. So after this, queen takes c3, and now white again has an intermediate move of rook takes
check,
d7 check. So black has to respond to the threat of his king versus, trying to move this queen being attacked by this pawn. So after rook d7 check, king to maybe like f6, and now we take the queen of our pawn and we're up a full rook. And so this is just utilizing pins and noticing that this queen can't take our rook because this queen is pinned to the king. So again, have to take, check, king takes, or king f6, and then now we can take. So if a response is maybe if black were to play e5, then we can simply take rook takes c4, and so after something like rook takes e4, we're up the exchange. Same thing if pawn takes c4, we just move the queen, and we're up the exchange again. So white's best plan is probably going to bring his king over here, stop this pass pawn, and push these pass pawns and activate this queen. So this queen right now is acting as a defender, but it really wants to get out and attack black's pieces. So, alright, let's go ahead and look at the next puzzle about absolute pins. Alright. So, in this position, try to create an absolute pin in order to win material. So go ahead, white to move. Alrighty. So in this position, we're trying to create absolute pin. So essentially, go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found the answer. But the correct move here is queen takes
check,
f8 check. And so the king has to take the queen. After this bishop is paying this knight to his king. And so in this position, white has a fork in mind. And so after this, probably
check,
knight e6 check. So we're attacking this king. This knight can't take because we have a pin. And so we're forking, we're attacking the king and the queen. So if the king moves away, we can take, after take, and now we are up. Up the exchange. So a knight for a knight for a rook. So all right, and now let's go ahead and try to use that similar absolute pin idea with this next puzzle. The idea of basically moving the king into a pin. So that's the key highlight here. Queen takes
check,
f8 check. We're moving the king into this pin in order to play knight e6 check, forking these pieces after king moves over. Knight takes the queen, and rook takes the knight, and now we're up the exchange. So, let's go ahead and look at the next puzzle with that idea in mind. Alright, let's go ahead and reveal the answer to this puzzle. After this, white has a good move, rook to d8.
check,
Check. And so black is forced to play king takes d8. So what does this do? This puts a pin on this knight to this king. And so in this position now, since this knight can't ever move, we can simply take this queen on c6 and win the material. So now probably here we could maybe even win this knight later. But nevertheless, we are up a queen for a rook. So white should have an easy game in this position. Something maybe even rook a8 check probably next. So regardless of what black does. So maybe even maybe rook g8, maybe. But nevertheless, that's the idea. The key idea here is rook d8 check. After king takes d8, forcing black into a pin. This knight is rendered basically useless in terms of mobility. So now we can take this queen. So before, if we were to do just take, this knight can move and do something to this. And so we're basically forcing the king into the pin, and we can take the queen. Okay. Alright, so here's the last puzzle for about absolute pin. So the question here is, black plays queen takes f6. Is this a good move or not? White to move and try to find absolute pins and try to find a way to exploit that idea. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video if you haven't found the answer. So black was trying to be up one pawn. And so here it's trying to, black is trying to use, take the advantage that this bishop can't move and take this queen because this king is, or this bishop is paying this bishop this bishop on d4 to this king. So white actually cancels out this effect of the pin. So after queen takes f6, then white plays, give you guys a moment, and rook takes c5. And so the idea here is this bishop is now attacking the queen because there's no longer a bishop pinning to the king. So white, after the black moves away, move his queen to safety, we move our rook to safety, and now we are up a whole piece for a pawn. So white should have an easier game after this. So even though absolute pins occur, so that this bishop, is under pressure, we can simply get rid of the pin by taking the piece to pin it. So after this, queen moves to safety, then we just move this back and we are safe and we're up a piece. So alright, so that covers absolute pins. Thank you guys for watching. This is Acerook. Next time we will do relative pins and we'll look at those examples in the game. Absolute pins don't really occur as much, but relative pins do occur more frequently. So nevertheless, thank you guys for watching. This is Acerook, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.